Hi everybody, this is Mattie with Altcoin Buzz. Hope you're doing well. We're going to have a feature for you today on a very particular project, and we're going to get into that in a second. And because this is an altcoin specific focus, I just want to state ahead of time that, as you guys all know, of course, I'm not a financial advisor. This is not in any way financial advice. If you choose to invest, do so at your own risk and do so only after consulting your own financial advisor. With that being said, guys, we're going to take a look today at a project that has a few of us kind of excited at Altcoin Buzz. And of course, we're returning to our namesake, or we're trying to, Altcoin Buzz, right? We're trying to alert you to new projects, new things that are going on in the world of crypto. This one specifically is called DAOstack. And there's a lot of information that we're going to get into here. It's a complex project, complex in a good way in that it's ambitious, and there's a lot of meat on the bones here that we can explore. I'm going to go ahead and play the first minute of this introductory video, which I believe you guys will be able to hear. Play this for about a minute, and then we'll get full into an explanation about this project and our thoughts and opinions on it.
For a very long period of time, we've been working as tribes, as hierarchies, and as markets. And that's how we get stuff done. For the first time, we are a truly global civilization. We are now at a point where neither markets nor hierarchies has the capacity to be able to handle the set of problems that we're facing, say climate. At a certain point, if you can't accelerate your capacity for solving problems exponentially, you're done. We have to invent an entirely new toolkit for how human beings can coordinate their sense-making, their choice-making, and their actions, a collective intelligence. And that is precisely what DAOstack is endeavoring to do.
Okay, so a little bit of a teaser there. Obviously that doesn't explain it all. There's quite a bit more to it, but you get a sense of what it is we're talking about. So DAOstack, in terms of the broad scope, it's designed to catalyze the future of collaboration. And by the way, guys, I'm referring to this article here that was posted on Medium. So it's DAOstack in fairly simple terms. And I'm just reading verbatim here. DAOstack is designed to catalyze the future of collaboration. It's a platform for decentralized governance that enables collectives to self-organize around shared goals or values easily and efficiently. DAOstack is sometimes called an operating system for collective intelligence, or a WordPress for DAOs. What are DAOs? DAOs are decentralized autonomous organizations. So for the rest of this particular presentation, I'm going to be referring to this article, and we're going to be looking at some other screens and some other examples as we go through this information. But of course, I will link to this. I encourage you to check it out. It's a very informative piece by DAOstack's communication director, Josh Zemmel. So looking here at their main press release, the whole idea of DAOstack. So this is a governance system, and this tries to swap out sort of top-down hierarchies, the type that we've been used to in government, in corporations, in any power structure you can think of, right? There's always been more or less a top-down power structure. And that's something that DAOstack is looking to remove, not by force, of course. This is sort of an opt-in type of system. But that's the challenge that we're dealing with right now, right? So decentralized autonomous organizations, it's a popular concept because they hold the promise of peers self-organizing to act collectively without concentrated power systems. What's the problem with those concentrated power systems? In that old school top-down hierarchical model, you always have the risk of, so what the article calls the suffering from concentrated points of failure, right? If you have one individual making a decision for an organization, well, that organization can flourish if that's a competent individual and if it's an honest individual. But if you have a CEO that's been charged with running an organization and he's unscrupulous, or maybe they're embezzling funds, maybe they're just incompetent and unintelligent and making all the wrong choices and driving the organization into the ground. So that's what we mean by points of failure. And DAOstack represents decentralization. And this is a press kit PDF that we'll link to. All of this content, of course, we're going to link to. It's extensive. They've done a great job setting the landscape here for us to be able to absorb this information, get a better sense of it. So it would probably be a good idea to go over some of this in addition to this video if you're interested in the project. Of course, we're going to link to it all below in the description. You get a sense of the approach that they're trying to create. DAOstack is all about decentralization, and it essentially programs decision-making, right? The collective decision-making of the group into the blockchain. And it relies on smart contracts that effectively cut out the middleman. So this is a wisdom of the group type of application. And DAO right now is trying to, they're being humble and they're being ambitious at the same time. Because what they're saying is that we don't want to create an application that's just going to go out and tackle all these problems. They're saying we want to build the soil. We not only want to build a foundation, we want to build the soil beneath the foundation, and we want to make sure it's pumped full of nutrients and that it's fertile and that it's ready to grow everything that's going to be subsequent to these initial ideas. And so they're saying they want to create, or they want to build that soil, which will then allow an ecosystem organically to grow and to flourish. And the analogy that they set forward is that of a Lego set. So a lot of this technology within the stack that we're going to explore further, a lot of it is based on modular interoperability, customizability, specifics that allow you to tailor one way or the other. A lot of creative control is built into it, and it's very dynamic and it's very adaptable. So that Lego analogy is apt. Another one that they use is a sandbox analogy, where they allow things to happen. They allow ideas and pieces of programming to be mixed and match. And the team wanted to make the project really accessible to all kinds of people. That includes technical people, that includes technophobes. So there's a wide range here that you're going to be able to use as far as the application goes. Here's the ARC framework that you can take a look at. We're going to take a look at the ARC specifically, what that represents in a moment, but you have adaptive, modular, and upgradable designs all at the same time. We're going to take another look in a moment at the Alchemy application that's been built into it. And this, again, is the press release here that you can freely examine. We're going to link to it in the description below. The Jen Token holographic consensus. Quite innovative, if I do say so myself. So just scrolling through this so you get a sense of it. The team here is on full display. It's quite transparent. It's quite open. You can look them all up. You can check out their accomplishments, their previous work history, and some of their press releases that have been out in the news as of late. I didn't mention, guys, but this is a new ICO. So this just launched about a week ago at the time of this recording. So this is really quite new. It's hot off the press, and it's something that we want to explore for that reason, because we deem the opportunity at this moment to be a good one. So here's the video that we began playing. We're going to link to that, of course, in the description below. Here's a look at the DAOstack website. So an operating system for collective intelligence. Linking to that video, of course. Decentralized collaboration at scale. Blockchain enables new forms of human association that combine the scale and efficiency of free markets with the alignment and coherence of startups. The future of work involves networks self-organizing around shared goals and interests, and a new economy where cooperation is the winning strategy. So further on here, you can see that this is the ecosystem that they've set up. Now, DAOstack, so decentralized autonomous organization. Stack, why is it a stack? Because you have the Alchemy, the ArcJS, the Arc Hives, and the Arc components. Let's break those all down. So this is why the name stack, right? Hence DAOstack. It represents a stack of modular characteristics built from the ground up, all of which are open source and all of which have varying degrees, varying levels of functionality. So to begin with, you have the Arc stack. This is the base layer of the stack. And then this is where bits and pieces of governments are represented by smart contracts. So these smart contracts, these bits and pieces, they can be mixed, they can be matched, they can be modified. Arc itself is written in Solidity code. But even if you're unfamiliar with that language, DAOstack offers arc.js, which is built on JavaScript. So that becomes a more approachable option if you're a front-end developer and you're not familiar with Solidity. Not a problem. The second layer is the application layer, and most users will interact with DAOstack without necessarily being blockchain developers, or maybe they're not software engineers either. Nonetheless, they can still interact with this application layer. So they will interact with DAO through dApps, right? Decentralized applications built on Arc and the arc.js layers. And dApps can relate to anything. They can relate to sports, they can relate to music, they can relate to social networks, whatever the case may be. Wherever your imagination takes you, you can create, you can involve yourself in a dApp that relates to your field of interest. So the other layer, moving on, is Alchemy. This is the first application that's being built on the stack. It's got an intuitive user interface for budgeting and for resource allocation for decentralized autonomous organizations, for DAOs. So with Alchemy, anyone can easily create a DAO. Anyone can get into it and become a creator in that space. And again, this is one of the more user-friendly areas of the stack. Then you have the archives. The archives are stored registries that are made to enhance interoperability among the DAOs and dApps using Arc and arc.js. So it's not overly complicated. I mean, it's the kind of thing that you have to wrap your head around. But so what they're trying to do, obviously, is they're trying to create a decentralized platform, right? One that supports other decentralized organizations. And what's nice about the stack, as I understand it, is that you're able to insert yourself at any level of that functionality. So if you want to push toward that decentralized goal, you can do so as a developer. You can do so as more of a creative type without any background in engineering or blockchain, without any familiarity with the blockchain. So this is really a tailor-made approach. It's all there. It's all working together. It's all open source, but you can involve yourself with it in a lot of different ways and from a lot of different angles. So what are some of the use cases for DAOstack, for this kind of decentralized technology? Well, you have a lot of different, and we're just scrolling through some of the features of the website here. So of course we're going to link to the website, but you have a lot of different options when it comes to the applications of this type of stuff. So broadly speaking, yes, you can use it to coordinate any large group of people that are trying to make any kind of decision. So if they're trying to make a collective decision about something, an agreement about what have you, that's where this comes in, because it's more or less a voting system that allows people to have a voice within a larger collective toward a consensus-based goal. Now, there are some complications that would arise normally in such a system, and they've already been covered. They've already been tackled. So we're going to get to that in a moment. But as you may suspect, yes, there are issues that come up with these type of proposals. Don't worry, they've been covered. We're going to get to that momentarily. But broadly speaking, the use cases boil down to, anytime you have a collective trying to make a decision. And you can apply it to collaboration to produce outcome type of work. An outcome could be any kind of a project, any kind of a product, any kind of a service. Broad use case number 2 is asset management and investings. So you have insurance applications, you have pension funds, venture funds, real estate. They could all benefit from this type of structure, no question about it. And then, of course, you have curation as well. You have the ability here to leverage the wisdom of the crowd to aggregate opinions on any kind of equality that may be subjective. So think about what it means in the real world already. You already have these systems where, for example, Yelp or TripAdvisor, where you're kind of collecting the opinions, the thoughts of everybody to determine whether or not something is worth your while, and you're trusting that wisdom of the crowd to do so. The same thing can apply to articles or videos on Reddit, website listings. All kinds of curation applications exist in this space. That's what makes it so interesting. A broad range of applications, certainly, and those are not the least of them, but just some initial ideas that will get you familiarized with what this is all about. So decentralized ownership is very important. Decentralized ownership means that effective mechanisms for large-scale collective decision-making enable crowds to co-own and co-manage assets and funds. So that's one of the use cases that we talked about. Of course, collaboration is another one, and curation is also important. We just discussed that. DAOstack runs on Jen. So what is Jen? Jen is the native token of the DAOstack platform. Basic operations across the DAOstack ecosystem, such as promoting proposals, will require the spending or holding of Jen. Jen will be distributed to contributors of value through the DAOstack framework itself, incentivizing development, promotion, and adoption. Now, here's the thing about any kind of proposed voting system, right? You have to have a precaution built into it. So if you have a system whereby you can accumulate power based on ownership, based on any kind of a voting system, well, that's not very good. That's a corrupt system just at the level of its functionality, at the level of its design. And this is where Jen Token comes into play, because you cannot buy voting power. So if I invest in DAOstack, for example, and I come out, I think the total circulating supply is only ever going to be 60 million. So if I go ahead and buy, hypothetically, let's say I buy 45 million Jen tokens, and now I'm 75% owner of DAOstack, does that mean I'm going to have a 75% weight in terms of all my vote? I'm going to be basically a majority voice in every type of decentralized vote that takes place? No. This is built into the algorithm. This is already considered. They've taken account of this, and it's where Jen Token comes into play. You cannot buy voting power, and you cannot establish any kind of a pay-for-play plutocracy system. So this is what's known as the holographic consensus of DAOstack, and this is the brainchild of Mattie Field, who's got some pretty decent credentials, by the way. He's coming from a background in string theory mathematics, so I think got a pretty good pedigree there. And of course, all of this stresses the idea of the collaborative economy. Nobody can take advantage one way or the other, and it gives me some confidence in the project and what they're aiming to create. The fact that those safeguards are already in place. They have those guardrails to keep everybody not in line, but they want to make sure that there's no foul play, that there's no corruption. So that's built out of the system by design. Here you have a timeline that you can explore further on their website, and I'd encourage you to check that out. Of course, on the website here, you can also access the white paper, which is available for viewing. Going back to the press release, and we'll take a look at the very end of it here, but broader description there. Now that we've covered this, I'd say go back. Maybe you want to take a look at the modular, the design of the stack. You want to take a look at the Alchemy application in particular, now that we've discussed it a little bit. The thing about the Jen token is that it offers that holographic consensus. And again, I'll say it again, this stresses the idea of a collaborative economy. So everything becomes easier, everything becomes more efficient and more frictionless in terms of decision making. The idea and the proposal is that this applies not only to individual collectives, so not only decision making within collectives, but between collectives as well. That's very important. And this ecosystem that we talked about, this fertile growth of an ecosystem of DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, that's the goal. So what happens when you have maybe tens of millions of people using the technology, hundreds of millions of people using the technologies? This becomes sort of an exponential organic growth context, and it's exciting to think about what the potential is. No one in that situation, by the way, is disproportionately wielding power, and no one is even able to cheat. Even if they wanted to cheat, no one is able to cheat by design. So what happens in that kind of context when that many people are using that system? I'd like to think that good things can potentially happen, and there is a lot of potential there. So again, check out the press kit. We're going to link to this. Check out the website. This is a really good article if you're still perhaps scratching your head about some of these ideas. I'm maybe not the best person to describe them technically, but I've done my best here. If you want to dig in further into these different components of the stacks, the idea of what is the holographic consensus, some of the use cases, do check out this article, An Explanation of DAOstack in Fairly Simple Terms by Josh Zemmel. And here you have an explanation video of the Alchemy system and a live demo performed by Mattie Field. We're going to link to that as well. You have an Ask Me Anything So a Reddit AMA here with Mattie Field as well in video format. And we do have some other points to tackle here. So a couple of potential, not necessarily criticisms, but a couple of things to consider. I mean, I think it would be fair to go through these. So of course you have individuals that are rating the ICO, people with different opinions out there. And I'm going to read specifically some of the, not weaknesses, but just some of the considerations that were brought up here by this particular review article. So one major strength of the DAOstack ICO, namely its scope, could also prove to be the project's Achilles heel. We have little track record for successful decentralized governance on a wider scale anywhere in the world. To drive adoption for DAOstack, the team will need to win over major players both within and beyond the blockchain space. But whether decentralized government will actually both function and flourish remains a completely open question. Okay, so it's probably fair to cite adoption at a large scale as a challenge, but I don't know, this doesn't necessarily seem to be a significant point as far as the adoption issue goes, because if you go back to the DAOstack website, oh, what have I done? If you go back to the DAOstack website, we're going to link to it anyway, it doesn't matter. There are all kinds of partners that are already listed, including Gnosis, including Endor, Sapien is there, Taleo, Culture, Menlo, Data Fund. So they already have this accumulation, or this, I should say, a little bit of momentum happening with partners, and they've all formally announced plans to integrate and build on the stack. So it's not necessarily a partnership challenge at this point. I mean, depending on how big of a partner you're defining, but these are some very, very good initial steps for a very young, a very new project. So another main risk or concern is the role of tokens. And there's little doubt that these token-based economic incentivization makes sense as part of DAO infrastructure, but whether users will adapt to the system and stake tokens and potentially lose them as a result of failed governance proposals is still a major open question. All right, well, perhaps, but that's something that I believe we're going to see a resolution to one way or the other soon. And finally, certain practical questions also remain. So for example, it's unclear whether an organization that wants to use DAOstack would have to acquire and distribute tokens among its members for the system to work realistically and not unexpectedly without significant trial and error. It is impossible to predict how the value of the system token could evolve and if users would have sufficient incentive to hold it in the first place, especially if certain organizations decide to opt for their own versions of the system. So this is perhaps a valid question. I think people will adapt if they're economically incentivized to do so. And Ethereum miners, for example, found it difficult to adapt to that system, did they? The network of predictors is the mining network of the holographic consensus. Except instead of managing the attention of computing resources, they are managing the attention of human resources. So it's also the way that they're building the system. It's designed to be flexible and adaptable, right? The holographic consensus, I think, is going to be fluid or perhaps may change over time. Maybe a lot, who knows? But DAOstack seems like it's designed to be a sandbox for experimentation and governance. In their own words, that's what they're trying to create. So, these are points to consider, but I wouldn't call them major criticisms either. I'm more optimistic than pessimistic, certainly. If you want to take a look at another Q&A, or a Q&A, I should say, but another piece by Josh Zemmel, the communications director, be sure to check this out here. We didn't really talk about price yet, but if you go over to coinmarketcap.com, the thing is that DAOstack launched, the ICO was completed about a week ago at this time. The ICO price was $1 per token, and I'll just refresh this, but you have a price now of 72 cents. So really you're looking at a bargain versus what was the price even at the time of the ICO. Total circulating supply, or I should say total supply of 60 million Jen tokens. If you like this project, you may think of 72 cents as a bargain, considering the ICO price was $1. We're going to link here as well to some other information. So this is what I like in essence about the project. This is what I find it appealing. If you've ever done a science project, and this is a widely known phenomenon, but you take a jar of anything. It could be grains of sand. It could be jelly beans. It could be pebbles, what, it doesn't matter. It could be trees in a forest even, and a little bit more abstractly. But you take a jar of jelly beans, for example. How many jelly beans do you think are in here? I don't know. Maybe I'll say 500. Maybe somebody as a troll will just come by and say, I think there's 15. Obviously incorrect. And somebody will come by on the other end of that and say, I think there's 9,000. Okay, that's too much. But if I statistically go through 100 people, and then I go through 500 people, maybe I sample 1,000 people, 10,000, 100,000, a million. The incredible thing, and this is a phenomenon that is documented and is observed, is not perhaps fully understood. But if I have a sample size of 30 people guessing about the number of jelly beans, that's going to be more accurate than if I had 20. And a sample size of 100 is going to be more accurate in their final estimation than the 30 were, and so on and so forth. 1,000 people will be even more accurate. So the wisdom of crowds is a very real phenomenon, and it's unbelievable. If I were to sample 1 million people, okay, and let's say the answer is 500 for just the sake of argument in this jar. If I were to sample 1 million people, statistically, the likelihood of being within 10 jelly beans of the right answer is actually extremely high if I were to sample 1 million people. So there's something about the accuracy of crowds that I find quite fascinating. And you can take a look here at an interesting book that I've come across, The Wisdom of Crowds, if you're more interested in the subject. But that's the appeal of this. That's the real power of DAOstack, is that it taps into that crowd wisdom, that crowd consensus. By design, it's built to eliminate any kind of corruption, eliminates cheating, and it's not going to in any way elicit any sort of pay-for-play method, because that's built into the algorithm to prevent that. So pretty cool. If you want to take a further look at the tech, do check out the press kit, do check out the DAOstack website. We're going to link to everything below, and I know this was a longer video, everybody. I hope it wasn't too repetitive, but a lot of information here. Do check it out. So soldiers of the Altcoin Buzz Army, if you have any more questions, please comment below. If you enjoyed this video, give us a like, give us a thumbs up. We got more content coming for you soon. Take care.